Alright, so obviously the Pokemon market is going in different directions for a lot of things. Now, the main thing here is obviously cards are becoming incredibly expensive, and not only are they becoming expensive, right, but there's also some cards that are getting expensive that probably don't need to get the prices that they're getting. Like, real talk, I think one thing that annoys me about when we're in these bull runs and it's almost chaos, right? No one can slow down at all. It's the fact that some cards that I don't feel deserve to get their price increases are getting them. But no, like, seriously, man, like it just seems like whenever we're in this whirlwind and everything's happening, it's just like no matter what it is, it's Pokemon. Oh, it must be in demand. This card must be climbing in value. And I think it's becoming hard to be a collector in this climate. Mainly because if there's some cards that you just want to collect, it just feels like, oh, people are just jumping on board to cards that they don't even believe in. You know, I mean, previously, if a card rose in value, like Iron Crown Special Illustration Rare, when that actually rose in value, that was because it was such a cool card for Temporal Forces. People were like, whoa, an Iron Crown has become an expensive card. This is so cool, right? And same thing with Magikarp Illustration Rare. Last year, when that actually started climbing heavily in value, everyone was like, wow, this is so exciting. It had this new, fresh, healthy energy in the hobby. And I kind of feel like some of the cards that are rising right now, they don't have that same pull power. It's just like, oh, they're just rising because we're in this hype period. It doesn't feel as organic or natural. And that's actually what I'm going to be taking you through today. Some of the cards that have been climbing heavily in value. Though, you know, at the same time as well, cards at the moment are getting hard to find. Product is getting hard to find. People are struggling to get product, right? These cards hold a lot of value, dude. Like well, you could actually hold a little cardboard in your hand, you know, if it's in a protective case or it's in a slab, that can actually be worth thousands and thousands of dollars. So I think a lot of people are waking up to this as well. Like, oh, wow, you can store your money in these things as well. So there's a lot of different sides that are coming on at the moment, right? And I do think for the hobby to maintain, it is important that Pokemon actually does up the printing demand. And I think actually Pokemon need to put in some more resources to getting product available. And I know I say this a lot, but the reason for that is because things are getting pretty wild out there, man. Like, and I think Pokemon actually need to print more. And if they cannot meet printing demands, they kind of need to slow down releases. I know that's probably going a little bit against the grain because people really love their new product, but really, if you're not being able to get any product when it releases, more on that later, right? What we're actually working with is some of these cards that are climbing heavily in value. The first one I want to cover is the Palkia Alt Art, right? This card is from Astral Radiance. It is a super unique card. You can see the price growth this has had lately has been pretty interesting, right? So you can see in the last 3 months, this was selling at a $38 card. And you can see as we climb up here, this is now selling for $65. Now, if we pull this into the year graph, you can actually see that this has exceeded its previous high. The previous high it had was when the alt art boom of last year happened. It reached the high of $43, but you can see right now selling for $64. Really cool card, but then again, Astral Radiance, man, that's getting harder and harder to find. I mean, you can find pockets of it, but you know, the fact that these alt arts are so hard, I think it's 1 in every 2 cases. The pull rates for these are incredibly difficult, and we can kind of see the market's kind of now playing out that way now, isn't it? Everyone's like, hey, maybe I want this Palkia. Maybe now is my last chance to get it, right? So a lot of people are now making these plays on these Sword and Shield alt arts. Now, another one, it's also from Astral Radiance, but it's the Origin Form Dialga. Check this one out, man. Similar growth. I'm going to put this into the year graph. You can see when the alt art boom happened, it went up to 51 USD. Then again, that pullback happened, right? And I do talk about this a lot because during that summer period for USA and that part of the world, Europe and all that, there usually is a bit of a market pullback, right? You can see that right here displayed. This was selling for 51 USD, dropped all the way down to $31. You know, so these things can happen, right? I mean, we can expect these things to happen. I'm not saying that it's definitely going to happen, but definitely don't rule out card prices going down in value. Check this out, man. Selling for $31 in October and right now selling for $66. You know, that's more than doubled in price since October, and that's what I mean, man. I think a lot of people are now waking up to Sword and Shield, and a lot of people want these Sword and Shield alt arts in their collection because they are gorgeous, right? I mean, one thing that the Sword and Shield era did so well was get those alt arts, and not only did they get the alt arts, but the pull rates of them were so difficult, so it did make a lot of interest with a lot of these cards, right? I do think this Origin Form Dialga is definitely one to look out for. Also, while speaking about this, if you are looking for a place to connect with the Pokemon community, please feel free to join my channel's Discord server. You'll actually be able to connect with like-minded Pokemon collectors, and you also get exclusive notifications for special events. The server invite is in the description of this video. Now, another one is the Zeraora V Alt. Now, this card has had a very interesting journey, right? So I'm gonna pull this into the year graph. What's really unique about this card, as you can see when that boom happened, this was selling for around 41 USD and it popped all the way up to 61 USD. And you can see when that crash happened, it found a new low of $39, right? But what's really unique about this card, you can see it still hasn't exceeded that high. It's pretty much there right now, okay? So we're selling for $61. Right now it's $60, but still you can see that high point in the market, what caused Chilling Reign cards to go down this far? I mean, it's pretty interesting to me, right? Because you would think that, oh, after such a high honeymoon period, what caused such a dramatic pullback? And you can actually see that right there. $61, not even a few months later, selling for $39, right? Massive, massive pullback. But then again, we can see it's now rising again in value. It's quite heavily desired. I do think Chilling Reign is a little bit underlooked as well. I don't think a lot of people value Chilling Reign like they value Fusion Strike or Evolving Skies. And you know, it's interesting that people don't have that same love for this set because the Calyrex, the Blaziken VMAX, right? You know, you got so many cool cards in here. The Gold Snorlax. I really think Chilling Reign and Chilling Reign singles definitely deserve a little bit more spotlight, especially when you're comparing them to Fusion Strike and Evolving Sky singles, right? Though Crown Zenith is also going through some interesting things, right? Now I'm on the Arceus VSTAR on Crown Zenith. You can also see in the last 6 months, this was selling for $63 in August, and look at this now, man, selling for $128. What an enormous price increase. And you know what? What's happening as well? Crown Zenith is so heavily desired right now, man. Like, a lot of people are just bullish for Crown Zenith because, of course, the artworks are fantastic. It looks absolutely amazing. The set itself, right? It is the final kind of set of Sword and Shield, right? So there's a lot of things going for Crown Zenith, and I do think some of these singles are finding new highs in their market, but I don't think that some of the Crown Zenith cards as well maybe have reached those high points, because when you look at other cards, which I'm going to be taking you through in a sec, but when you look at some other cards from Sword and Shield, they're reaching 300, 400, 500 USD. So it is interesting that Crown Zenith is still lagging behind in comparison to those, right? Same thing when we look at the Giratina. This card is so cool, man. This is actually one of my favorite artworks. I did actually pull this card, believe it or not. And like, it was actually my final, I don't want to spoil the video actually. I'll link the video for you here if you want to watch it. But you can see last year around this time, this was selling for $76. Super, super affordable, man. Like, for a card of that rarity and the fact that it was the hardest card to pull from Crown Zenith, that was a pretty good bargain, right? Then you can see it found a high for $138. And obviously when those Sam's Club, Crown Zenith, Sea and Sky boxes came out, this kind of went down to $95. But you can see right now selling for $209. Right now it's actually found a new market high, but I'm not surprised, right? I mean, this card's artwork is so cool, man. It is so unique. It is such a triumphant artwork. I really, really rate this Giratina card. Not only that, it doesn't feel like, oh, it's just a card placed. You really capture the environment of Giratina in this artwork. It really makes it feel alien, right? And I don't think a lot of cards can capture that, right? And I think that's actually why this is one of my favorite cards from Sword and Shield, is it really gets that alien feeling of Giratina. Lost Origin, I do love the Giratina V in that. I really like that artwork, but I think this one has so much more character and personality. Now, again, you can also see the Mewtwo from Crown Zenith, another one that's really performing quite well. You can see this one was selling for 45 USD, and then it kind of found a new high of $125. This has actually become one of the most expensive cards of Crown Zenith, and that wasn't always the case. I wouldn't say it was one of the more affordable cards, but the 4 gold cards really held that ground, and this was always below them. But now, I think this is actually competing with those gold cards as well, which is really cool to see because it is such an awesome artwork. But in saying that, Crown Zenith ETBs are also climbing in value. Let's go pull this into the year graph. You can see, check that out. You can see Crown Zenith is really having some market movement. Pulling that here, you can see Crown Zenith for February last year selling for 42 USD, and you can see it's had some very slow and steady growth, but of course just recently shot up to 110 USD per ETB. I do think Crown Zenith is getting very, very difficult to find out in the wild. I'm not surprised, and I do think it took a little bit too long to get to this price point as well, given how good the artworks are. Now moving on to another really interesting one. This is the Sylveon V from Evolving Skies. I'm going to pull, you can see in the last 6 months, check this out, man. I mean, selling for 72 USD, USD, right now selling for 138 USD, an absolutely enormous price increase, right? Now, I just pulled that onto the year graph and you can kind of see the behavior this card has had. Kind of was sitting at $56 last year, went all the way up to $94, dropped down to $72, and now sitting at $138. What's really unique about this Sylveon, and I think all these cards in general, is because Prismatic Evolutions came out, I think a lot of people became bullish, man, for the Evolutions, right? Everyone wanted their Eevees again. Everyone was just like, oh, I'm going to now load up on my Evolving Skies Evolutions because of Prismatic Evolutions, and we can kind of see that playing out. Now, this is the V, but the VMAX Alt Art, which is even harder to pull from Evolving Skies, that's also had some huge price increase. The Sylveon VMAX, you can see right here in the last 6 months, this was selling for $191 in August of last year, and right now, check this out, man, selling for $418. This is such an expensive card. It is a gorgeous artwork. It is a really cool artwork, but then again, it is now hitting those real high price points. We pull this into the year graph, and you can see when that alt art boom of last year happened, it hit a market high of $269, and then it kind of found its feet around that 190 point. But then again, selling for $400 right now, even more, $418. Huge price increase, right? Though in saying that, not all these cards have just climbed that heavily in value and just gone, you know, to the moon as well. One card that's quite interesting is the Sylveon from Prismatic Evolutions. Now, the special illustration rare obviously was priced a little bit too high at $738, but you can see this has been going down pretty heavily in value, now selling for $516. What's actually pretty interesting is this card is still more expensive than the Evolving Skies Alt Art, right? Which is kind of wild to me because the Evolving Skies Alt Art has had years to get to that price point. It's had years to kind of establish and get to that point. This kind of feels a little bit too quick, too soon. But then again, I do think that with Prismatic Evolutions, the reprints and all that, I do think that maybe some of these evolution cards will just go down a little bit in value, trickle down slowly until they find that price point in the market. Now, as these cards are climbing in value, it does really make you wonder what will happen if some of these cards go the other way. And funnily enough, that actually has happened before, and there are actually 5 examples of cards which were once seen as the gold standard, and then they crashed heavily in value. If you're curious what those 5 Pokemon cards were, you can actually see that right here. The video that's appearing on screen right now, I look over the 5 cards that crashed very heavily in value. Click the video that's appearing on screen and I'll see you there.